Hello, Peter. Freaking love Spider-Man so much.
Alfred Molina's Doctor Octopus is gonna be in the new Spider-Man movie, so let's take a close look at a scene from Spider-Man 2. By the way, spoilers for Spider-Man 2, click away in 3, 2, 1. I really like the scene where the tentacles come alive in the operating room and kill all the surgeons. There's nothing particularly noteworthy about the editing itself, it's just pretty good. It's certainly one of the more interesting sequences in the movie to pick apart, just because the editing is so fast. It's also the scene that leans hardest on Raimi's horror bona fides. This team of director, cinematographer, and editor in Raimi, Bill Pope, and Bob Murawski all worked on Army of Darkness together in 1992, and they've continued to work together since. This is a team of creative department leads that really know how to execute Raimi's particular horror sensibility. So let's talk about this 2-minute, 30-second scene from Spider-Man 2 and the way that it uses cinematic language to execute a horror scene. We start with the establishing shot of the hospital. The next shot begins by wiping across the screen with a little yellow laser effect. There's also a substantial J-cut during the establishing shot. The audio brings us into the hospital before we're in the hospital, and the wipe makes the transition gradual, while also cluing us in that we're looking at a bleep-bloop computer screen.
As you can see, molten metal penetrated the spinal cavity.
I'm not going to point out every J and L cut in the sequence because there are too many to keep track of, but I'm noting it here because the wipe with the little yellow laser is a visual extension of that J cut. Shot 2 is the second longest shot in the sequence and can be broken down into 3 parts. It starts as a close-up of this X-ray while the doctor describes what we're looking at, pulls out into a close-up lateral tracking shot of the chief surgeon, continuing on a crane until it lands on a wide, high angle of the whole room. I like the ensemble staging here. There isn't a lot to this blocking, but it's just busy enough. I especially like how the saw comes up into frame right when the surgeon says,
"Slice up the harness."
This is also the first time we really get to see how big these arms are on a scale that makes sense. We've seen Doctor Octopus wearing the arms already, but what we haven't seen is their full length, the mass of them draped between these structures. It's a fascinating image. Shot 3 begins a string of shots, concluding with shot 9 that move in and then move out. What do I mean? Shot 3 and shot 9 are the same medium framing, maybe with a little adjustment, but effectively the same setup. You don't notice it, but those 2 shots are the outside layer of the Matryoshka doll. Shot 4 is the reverse of the doctors laughing at the surgeon's joke. Shot 5 is decidedly closer than shot 3. Shot 6 is an extreme close-up of just the eyes, and we follow his eyeline up frame left to the support holding the tentacle in shot 7. The surgeon's perspective shot, and come back to the extreme close-up in shot 8 as he decides to cut into the tentacle, pulling back even further in shot 9. The peak of focus is the slight movement of the support, and we move in, closer, closer, until we're there, and then we come away and come all the way away. This is also the first instance of the frenetic editing that defines the rest of the scene. As the surgeon senses that something's wrong, the cuts get faster, until his fears are assuaged and the shots get held for longer again. Shot 10. I love shot 10. It's a little unbelievable that this dude didn't see the huge tentacle, but I can forgive that. This movie's use of reflections as a motif is generally very interesting. The 2 famous examples are Doc Ock's wife being killed with a shard of glass and the impossible zoom out of Doc Ock's glasses before the train fight. But if you're observant, reflections are everywhere. If you'll indulge a tangent, this is an extension of the Green Goblin's psychosis from the first film, being depicted by Defoe playing scenes with himself in a mirror. What was in the first film a useful visualization for the Jekyll-Hyde dynamic of the Green Goblin has been expanded in the second film to become a pervasive sense of dual identity. Spider-Man 2, in particular, is about Peter Parker wrestling with also being Spider-Man. We won't fully have a Green Goblin-style dueling personality for Spider-Man until the third movie, but we're keeping those mirrors around to maintain the concept. All of these characters wear masks to hide a part of themselves. Come to think of it, every villain in the Raimi trilogy except for the Sandman is an otherwise honorable person driven to megalomania by an intrusive force. And I think I've spotted an interesting missed opportunity in Spider-Man 3 to have Peter Parker talk to Venom in the mirror like Green Goblin before him. This moment is actually a deleted scene, but I don't think it goes far enough. It's the same visual language, yes, but I can imagine a scene where Peter and his dark self have a full conversation that creates a more direct parallel. Regardless, Shot 10 is also the wind-up for the first beat of this action scene. 11 and 12 barely happen, and then the doctors are getting thrown around everywhere. 11 and 12 in parallel are also interesting because of the way they conserve the movement. 11 is completely static as the claw moves towards the camera, and 12 preserves the movement of the frame by zooming in on a static subject. Shot 11 also begins a continuum of movement. This first punch goes from frame left to frame right. The claw and tentacle behind it aren't coming right at the camera, it's kind of coming down and to the bottom right. And that left to right motion is maintained as the scientist flies through the air and crashes through the glass. Actually, if you're going frame by frame, the surgeon crashes through this glass twice. In the final frame of Shot 14, the glass shatters and then is magically reformed to shatter again in Shot 15. I don't think this is an oversight. This is a technique every frame of painting talked about in their video about Jackie Chan. Rewinding the action a little bit gives us time to take in the new angle, while also extending the travel time of the hit.
In other words, show it twice, and the audience's mind will make it one hit that's stronger.
This guy really goes through this glass, and then we zoom in on the screaming woman in Shot 16, and we're in full Evil Dead mode now, baby. Wanna know how I know we're in Evil Dead mode? Shot 17. We're back in the same corner of the room we landed on at the end of Shot 2. It's a familiar location, but now it's chaos. There's tentacles everywhere, there's sparks, doctors are cowering. It's a longer shot, so we've got a real chance to take it all in. Total mayhem. As a guiding hand through the mayhem, there are two perspective characters to follow whose stories are told in fragments. This woman who gets dragged around and claws at the floor, and Chainsaw Guy. We're introduced to Claw Girl first. This tentacle gets stuck in the ceiling in Shot 18, a low angle medium, reverse to Claw Girl, high angle close-up. Eye line at the claw in the ceiling. She screams at the claw. Back to the claw. Still low angle, a little bit closer, it breaks free, and we follow its eye line to her as it lunges down. Reverse to Claw Girl. Same framing as Shot 19, exactly the same framing. She turns and runs, and as we enter the cowboy framing of Shot 22, she gets grabbed by the foot and dragged out of frame. You may not have understood that the woman in Shot 21 is the same woman in Shot 22. For one, the geography's off. In Shot 17, we see that the beefier claw stuck in the apparatus in the ceiling is here, on the right side of the room if facing the door. But when the woman runs and gets dragged by the tentacle in Shot 22, she's on the left side of the room and next to the wrong table. The scream is supposed to cover up the discrepancy. I suspect this isn't actually Claw Girl getting dragged here when they staged it, but they discovered in the edit that they could use Shot 22 to imply that this is Claw Girl and show her getting grabbed by the claw. Her origin story, if you will. Interestingly, we're still preserving the left to right continuum of motion with the claw coming down at Claw Girl from left to right. Obviously, she's dragged away frame left, but the camera keeps tracking to the right, and then this guy gets grabbed and pulled frame right, and we see his shadow goes from frame left to frame right in Shot 23. The light falls at the end of 23, and the sparks are used to do a transition into Shot 24. In Shot 24, again, the motion is left to right, as this tentacle moves left to right and presumably attacks a person panicking in silhouette in the bottom right quadrant. Now, what's interesting about this is that my first instinct is to intercut shots with multiple different vectors of motion. It's a purposefully disorienting scene. I would expect that the continuum of motion being disrupted by every shot would be conducive to that style. The lesson here, I think, is that the audience needs a thing to ground them. But this is a very chaotic scene, but that chaos comes from wild shifts in angle and perspective, and that all of these people are in the same costume. But in every shot, you can expect the motion to be from left to right. A neat consequence of this is that all of these stunt shots and inserts and things were designed to all cut together without having to consider the continuum of motion. So the editors can recombine this footage in whatever order serves their greater goal. We already saw this in Shot 22. Let's track the story of Claw Girl, a play in 3 acts. We meet her in shot 20. 2 shots later, she gets grabbed and starts to be dragged. We don't catch up with her again until shot 29. We see a glimpse of her foot getting dragged by the claw, and her scream of "help me" to clue us in that this is Claw Girl. We get confirmation of that in shot 30, as the camera follows her motion. It's a shaky shot, and it almost feels like she's holding the camera. Her last scene is shot 34, where she gets her name, as she scratches into the floor with her fingernails so hard that she's peeling up little strips of linoleum. Jesus. What's effective about this sequence is that it gives us something to focus on. The guy's getting grabbed by the head and thrown around is a good move, and it's an action that sets up the way that Doctor Octopus fights Spider-Man later in the movie, but it's also depersonalized because we can't see their faces. Claw Girl is actually disturbing, and it grounds the sequence. Claw Girl's final shot also comes at an interesting turning point in the scene. Her story is intercut with people getting grabbed. A scalpel guy gets electrocuted, a dude gets slammed into the ground. Shot 31, a guy being flung around by the head like a toy. And then, shot 32. Almost exactly halfway through a 63-shot sequence. Otto Octavius, blindfolded, unconscious on the operating table. A subtle push-in emphasizes this close-up. It matters that you get this. His body is being jerked around by the tentacles above him. He is not in control. The tentacles are doing this by themselves. And with that context, the rest of the scene plays out. Claw Girl is dragged away, and Chainsaw Guy is pinned against the wall in shot 35. Shot 36 is the same action from a more direct angle. The claw lets go, and as it pulls back, the editor cuts on the motion to shot 37, a reverse of 36, as the claw pulls back and moves in again. The editor cuts on that motion too, and now we're back to the same framing as 36 in shot 38, as the claw grabs the guy's chest. These shots establish this corner as a micro-location. We're gonna be here a while, still cross-cutting with everything else, but especially these 3 angles in 35, 36, and 37 are what the rest of Chainsaw Guy's coverage is going to look like. In shot 39, he gets slammed against the table camera left. This motion begins at the end of 38, but only in a few frames. It's very subtle. Now, this crash on the table is 2 shots stitched together. There's a very subtle hidden cut right when he hits the table. They've used the smack of that beat to cut to a very similar angle of the same motion, basically using the first half of one take and the second half of the other. I actually missed the hidden cut when I was writing this and needed to redo all of my numbers. He also totally looks at the chainsaw in shot 40, the chainsaw being a foreground element, and we can sort of see that, but it's not the most visually clear idea. The next 2 shots are all about communicating that this doctor sees a chainsaw by simplifying visual information. We push in on his eyes as he looks to camera, and then turn around and push in on the chainsaw. And the editors have timed this precisely so that you get a good look at the chainsaw and process that it's a chainsaw. You have enough time to out loud say, "Eyes, chainsaw." The editors could have kept the saga of Chainsaw Guy intact, going directly from shot 42, which establishes the chainsaw, to shot 47, in which he reaches for the chainsaw. But doing so would lose track of all of the other doctors. That broader scene isn't over yet. So this action keeps getting interrupted to give us more beats with the other doctors. By the way, this guy who gets smashed into the wall from shot 44 to 46 is American Werewolf in London director John Landis. And the motion of these shots is, again, from frame left to frame right. Shot 47, Chainsaw Guy reaches for the chainsaw. There's a focus rack from his face to his hand to draw your attention to his hand. In shot 48, a motion begins that shot 49 is really dedicated to, but 48 is important connective tissue because it reestablishes the geography. He can't reach the chainsaw, and the tentacle is going to pull him away from the chainsaw in shot 49. Oh no! He needs the chainsaw. Then he crashes into the table again, and he's pulled to the floor. That downward motion and the pulling of the tablecloth is the movement the editor cuts on to bring us to shot 50, as the chainsaw falls where the guy is. Oh no! What's gonna happen next? They're gonna go to another cutaway before they tell you. I absolutely love shot 51. It's just another insert shot of a tentacle moving to frame right, but I like that the camera is locked to the claw. The way they got this shot was probably by fixing the camera and the tentacle to a turntable. It's so simple, but that's what makes it so crisp. I also love shot 52. It's a great demonstration of the scene's use of shadow. Like any great horror scene, we're getting a lot of mileage out of implication and only seeing the monster in glimpses. It's Dutch angles. In fact, I think this is the only true Dutch angle in the sequence. The lighting choice is harsh and sculpted. It feels super German impressionist. I think it's the scene condensed into one image. A woman backed into a corner screaming at the crazy robot monster. I love it. And by the way, all of these actresses absolutely kill it. Like, yeah, they're all just screaming in terror, but that's a genuine skill and a difficult thing to sell. All three of these women nailed it. Okay, back to Chainsaw Guy. Shot 53 is an exact match for shot 50. The tension is broken as Chainsaw Guy raises his chainsaw in triumph. Now, between shot 53 and 54, there seems to be a continuum of movement where he raises the chainsaw and brings it down on the tentacle, but that motion is only half present. He starts to bring the chainsaw down at the top of 54, but that motion never starts in 53. Instead, the tentacle raises to meet the chainsaw in 53. Not literally, but what matters from a geography perspective is more that the saw and the tentacle are growing closer, and your brain does the rest, especially because the tentacle stays in the same spot on either side of the cut. Shot 55 starts another run of shots where we learn some very vital information about these tentacles. We see a single tentacle in close-up and cut to a shot that looks like nothing else in the movie. It's shaky, it's handheld, it's fisheye. The color is washed out and overexposed like a CCTV camera, and it's ducking and weaving over and around obstacles. It's easy to infer that this is the tentacle's perspective shot given all of these properties. It couldn't be clearer. But if you still aren't sure, you get another hint with shot 57 and 58, showing two tentacles next to each other, and then another tentacle vision perspective shot, this time with two perspectives, like the tentacles are next to each other. It almost looks like binocular vision. Also, Chainsaw Guy stops chainsawing as he realizes how screwed he is. This is to set up the payoff of shots 59 and 60, where a third tentacle joins in and they all attack at once. And while I acknowledge that the four-quadrant shape of shot 60 only kind of makes sense, isn't one of these tentacles pinning him against the wall? I like that each tentacle attacks a different part of his face. The final frame of this shot makes a face, eye, mouth, distorted like a Picasso painting or something from a Syriac video. A very subtle touch in shot 59 is the little glowing dots at the center of the tentacles go from white to red right before they attack. What this means in universe is that the tentacles are in control when the light turns red, and Otto Octavius is in control when the lights are white.
Something in my head.
The lights are white when the tentacles are docile, and they turn red when the tentacles are violent. In shot 61, Chainsaw Guy dies. The chainsaw falls to the floor with a little spin-down noise, nestled in a limp hand, framed by scattered medical equipment and shattered glass. The tentacle crosses over the scene, only seen in shadow and in the reflection of the chainsaw's chrome. Unfortunately, the nature of this reflection made it difficult to paint out the sticks holding the tentacle puppet, and you can see them in the reflection, but if you don't know to look for them, you might not know that they're there. One of the big successes of this scene is that it's horrifying and brutal without being gory. There's no blood in this scene, there's no injury, but there is death and destruction, and I appreciate that balance. This shot is a good example of a greater horror being communicated through implication. Chainsaw Guy's head just got crushed, but we only see the effect of his death. His chainsaw dies as he dies. Otto Octavius wakes up in shot 62, the longest shot in the sequence, and they're right to hold on this for so long. The edit could sell the carnage, but Alfred Molina has to sell the response. By the way, notice how the scene until now has played without music. It doesn't need it. There's a rhythm to the chaos and a melody to the screaming. Music would just be intrusive. That does make the scene an interesting opportunity for a rescore. Okay, so the tentacle takes off the blindfold and Octavius looks around. But is Octavius removing his own blindfold, or is the tentacle doing it? It could be either, but I like the implication of the latter. It reinforces the mind of their own thing. He looks around. He realizes what's happened. It wasn't all a nightmare. The experiment failed. His wife really is dead. He reels back and shot 63. I really like the God rays. Like, just generally, this is good lighting for this moment with the extreme low-key and the underlit edge, but the God rays add so much. The light comes from below, and eldritch horror is bursting up through hell. The cool part is, these are the CG tentacles. You can tell because it's too wide for the puppets to be practical, and the movement is a little too smooth. But the arms are still creating movement in the God ray behind him. I don't think that God ray is actually there, or at least it's been augmented in the computer to make the arms interact with it. I love that they took the time to do that. It adds so much to the moment. And that's the scene. To wrap this up, thinking about where this scene fits into the movie, it's sandwiched between Octavius's failed fusion experiment and Octavius turning evil in the abandoned warehouse. This scene, as a prelude to him devising his plot and a postlude to the fusion reactor exploding, tells us a couple things. It's a reasonable logical consequence of a reactor explosion, being taken to a hospital, and it's a scene that showcases the destructive power of these tentacles. But what it is not is a scene where Doctor Octopus furthers a broader motivation. He's not making a decision or trying to accomplish anything. In fact, he's asleep for the whole scene. This is not the birth of Doctor Octopus. This is the birth of his tentacles, the true villain. As always, thank you for watching. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to see more like it. I have a couple videos in the works. There's 2 more Bonding Time episodes coming down the pipe and 1 video about a video game that I'm very excited to finish. But this was also fun to do, and I want to make more. So y'all leave a comment suggesting other scenes you'd like to see this kind of breakdown on. I make no promises, but I'm interested in what you think. Thank you for watching again, and I will see you in the next one.